Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. So today I wanted to share with you a couple of my absolute favorite short story collections. So that's for two reasons. Number one, because spooky season tends to be really full of activities. So whether it's going out to haunted houses or events, watching a lot of movies, and decorating and Halloween hunting and the whole thing. So I find that short story collections are absolutely perfect. And the other reason is because if you've watched my most recent upcoming horror books for September, the release of A Taste of Darkness is coming up this week, and I'm so excited about this short story collection. So to celebrate the release of this book, which if you don't know is chock-a-block full of YA horror and spooky stories, all kinds, from vampires to murders gone wrong to ghosts, all the things. So I thought this was a perfect time for me to talk about some of my favorite short story anthologies, because I just love them, and like I said, in spooky season, these are perfect. So the first one is The Tales from Valleyview Cemetery by John Brell and Joseph Sullivan. So this is a short story collection I believe I read 2 years ago, and all of the stories revolve around this particular cemetery. So either in the cemetery or people walking through, or even just outside of the gates. And this has all kinds of stories in it, from the gross to spooky, supernatural, and there's one that really did get under my skin because I'm claustrophobic, and there's a very claustrophobic story in here. And one of my favorite scenes, I guess, from Halloween, or themes from Halloween, is cemeteries. So this one is absolutely perfect. And there are a couple of other ones that John Brell has written, and two are At the Cemetery Gates. So At the Cemetery Gates Volume 1 and Volume 2. I personally haven't read these yet, but if The Tales from Valleyview Cemetery is, reminiscent of these other two, then I wanted to throw these ones in there as well. The next series is super nostalgic for me. It's the Scariest Stories You've Ever Heard by Catherine Burt, and I have Volume 2. I'm still on the hunt for Volume 1 and Volume 3. This particular one, though, is one that I had when I was a kid, and I literally read it until it fell apart. I loved this book so much. It's super short. These are a little bit rare to find, but of course you guys know my love of vintage horror and vintage children's books, so I definitely wanted to throw this one in there because it's super nostalgic. So these stories are like folklore type stories, so some of them might seem a little bit familiar, but it's like new takes on old folklorish tales. And there's one in here about a dress that's really good, and one in here about a spooky father and daughter that's really good. So those are two of my favorites. Like I said, it's super short. It's only about 90 pages for all of the short stories. And what I find is they're really good because they're, obviously they're shorter fiction, and so there's no fluff, there's no filler. It's just pure spooky folkloric fun. So like I said, still on the lookout for Volume 1 and Volume 3. I keep checking my local library as well, but I can't find them there either. But if you guys can find these in your library or at a used bookstore, I would highly recommend picking these ones up. And then along the same lines, out of the Ghost Tree series, we have Campfire Ghost Stories by Joanne Christensen. And this one is very much, like I said, along the same lines of the Scariest Stories You've Ever Heard, in that they're based on kind of folkloric sort of tales. That you have the tale of the hitchhiker in here, and the hook with the hand and all of that kind of stuff. And I love these because they're perfect to read if you're looking for something really cozy and familiar. And they're also perfect for like kids that are having sleepovers and all of that sort of thing during this season, which I used to love telling ghost stories at sleepovers when I was a kid. We always had, movie time, and then we had ghost story time right before bed. And so this one is perfect, and really the entire series of these, which is mostly folkloric tales, but these ones specifically are perfect for spooky season. And then I couldn't talk about folklore without mentioning the Haunted Canada series. So these books have several authors and they're super short as well. So if you can find these in your local bookstore, I know if you're in Canada, obviously it's going to be a lot easier to find. I would highly recommend these ones. They're true hauntings and a lot of them take places in a lot of historical places around Canada. So I find that these are perfect, like if you have kids that you want them to learn a little bit more about the country, or even adults that want to learn a little bit more about the country. And of course, Canada has a rich history of storytelling, especially out east where I'm from, in the provinces that are a little bit older. So I had to plug this series because it's one of my favorites. And then one book that I read almost every year is The Melancholy Death of Oyster Boy and Other Stories by Tim Burton. And yes, it is that Tim Burton from Corpse Bride and The Nightmare Before Christmas and all of that. This is a short collection of both stories and poems that he's written, and it has a lot of his illustrations in there as well. It's a super tiny book. I can't find my copy. I don't have it with me, but it's really good. It's one of my favorites. You can definitely get this on Amazon still. And what I find is this is one that a lot of people don't know about. A lot of people don't know that Tim Burton also has books of the stories out as well as his movies. And you know, it is pure Tim Burton. It definitely has all of the feels. So during spooky season, of course, I watch all of the familiar movies. I love Corpse Bride, I love The Nightmare Before Christmas, and I also read this book. And then last but not least, I couldn't talk about short story anthologies without talking about Autumncrow by Cameron Chaney. This book is one of my favorite books of all time. I love these stories. I wish I could live in Autumncrow Valley. It's fantastic. If you guys haven't read this yet, I'm sure most of you probably have, as you're also members of Cameron's channel as well. But if you haven't picked this one up yet, definitely pick it up for the spooky season. It's one of the best Halloween books that I've read, and I do plan on rereading this this year along with the huge TBR that I've put together. I don't know how I'm going to get through all of the books, but Cameron's writing is so deep, and it's not only just great stories, but it has a lot of messages in between the lines. And when I remember the first time I read this book, and I just fell in love with it, and it was before I knew Cameron as a person, and so I can't recommend this book enough. I'm going to talk about it until the day I die. And of course we have Autumncrow High, the first installment in Autumncrow High. It's called Fresh Hell, is going to be coming out, I believe, this fall. I'm hoping Cameron is still on track to get it out this year. So if I find out a release date, I will let you guys know as soon as possible. But for right now, I am still gonna plug Autumncrow because this is one fantastic story collection, and I think I'm gonna read it every single year. So there you guys go. There's a few story collections. Number one, because it's spooky season and I love story collections. And number two, A Taste of Darkness is out on September the 14th. So we're coming up on that now. And I can't wait to get my hands on it. If you guys are into spooky YA stories, this one's definitely going to be for you. So that's everything I have for you today. Make sure you leave me a thumbs up if you like the video, and leave me a question or a comment down below because you know I love chatting with you guys. But until next time, stay spooky, everybody. Bye.